Hi, Jumbos. I'm Shane Woolley.
And I'm Sid Davakaruni.
The TUTV team is now here today with Dean of Admissions Lee Coffin to discuss the powerhouse of an admissions team that he's built here in his 13 years on campus before he goes off to the wilderness of New Hampshire in the fall.
Dean Coffin has worked with Tufts admissions since 2003 and has overseen a marked increase in selectivity at the university. He is a self-described green thumb, wordsmith, and puppy whisperer. This is not his first TUTV appearance, as his past filmography includes Jules and Monty and Wayjack, so we know he's ready. Dean, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
We're going to start off with some rapid-fire questions.
Okay.
But before we do, if you sound like you wanted to explain your scruff.
My lumberjack look.
Lumberjack look.
Yeah. Well, it's March, and it's a Saturday, and we are locked in the conclave of the admission committee. So this is what we look like on the inside of the admission process while we're actually making decisions. So no suits.
Well, your scruff looks much better than my scruff.
My scruff is increasingly white. So I call it my Santa scruff
nice,
at this
nice.
point. So it's
nice and jolly.
Yeah, nice and jolly, exactly.
Nice. Well, we'll start off some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Get the mood going. All right. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word quirky?
I think quirky means different things to different people. I think as it relates to a characterization of Tufts, I think what people are saying is this is a campus that has unexpected combinations of personality traits. That's positive.
Nice.
I think there are some people of the parent age when they hear the word quirky and it means weird, and I don't think that's what people are suggesting when they say there's a quirkiness here.
Nice.
So, as we said before, you are a puppy whisperer.
I am a puppy whisperer.
So, what kind of puppies would you like to whisper to the most?
My own puppy is what started the whispering. So when Logan and I first met 4.5 years ago, I had never had a dog before. And what was surprising to me was the way the dog and I bonded very, very quickly. And I soon realized dogs in general liked me. So I hadn't really been paying attention to the little guys. But once I had one, I found I had a Dr. Dolittle quality where I'd be walking down the street and a dog would go by and the dog would be like, hey. And so I discovered a skill I didn't know I had.
What song is your guilty pleasure?
My guilty pleasure, well, my current song, so this is sort of embarrassing to have to admit this in a recorded way. I catch myself humming Sorry by Justin Bieber more than I would like to acknowledge that I do. And I will out Professor Fio Amanetto on this one too. He was in a engineering staff meeting the other day, and he's like, I can't get this Bieber song out of my head. And the same thing happened to me, where I was driving to work one day and listening to Kiss 108, and it came on, and I caught, my hand reached out, and I actually turned it up, and I thought, oh my God, when did I become a middle school kid? Like I just turned up Justin Bieber. So that would be, for people who know me, that's a shocking.
Yeah. Bieber
You caught it.
Yeah, you caught it.
So, bow ties or fun socks?
Oh, I can only have one?
Yes.
Well, so I have a sock rule. My sock rule is I don't wear them after Memorial Day.
At all?
No, so even with a suit.
Wow.
So at matriculation every year, most students wouldn't notice this, but under my robe and my suit, I'm usually not wearing socks.
Do you go full McCartney, like no shoes?
I wear shoes,
Okay.
but I don't wear socks.
Nice.
So there's more of the year when bow ties are possible. But if I have to pick between the two, my socks are definitely more of a day-to-day part of my wardrobe. Yeah. So you've noticed I have socks that aren't the norm. I mean, today I'm okay, but they're...
It's part of like the coffin aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started a trend in Benditson too. Like most of the admission officers have taken up the colorful sock trend.
That's going to be one of your legacies as you
I
go
think
on.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Express your nerdy side.
My nerdy side is I like election statistics, and I am a devotee of 538.com. And even when I was a kid, I would gravitate towards polls and election results, sort of a harbinger of becoming. I was a political science minor, but I've always been really fascinated by election results and patterns and upsets like Bernie winning the Michigan primary. Like, why? How did that happen? So I think the numbers are really interesting, like who's voting for whom and why, and how patterns shift by state. So that's sort of my nerdy side.
You ever thought about running for public office?
I did. I once upon a time. Yeah, that was something I had thought about. But I think in the contemporary world, social media has made politics really complicated for candidates, and I don't know that I have the appetite for that anymore.
Now that we've had a couple of icebreaker questions,
yes,
we'd like to go further into your background and your time spent here at Tufts. So, you often cite your experience as a first-gen college student at Trinity as a drive for your sort of passion to give others the same opportunities here. What drove you to apply to a college, and how do you think that your experience as a first-generation college student might have been different than those whose parents had degrees?
So my experience as a high school senior, and you have to remember the early 80s were a really different landscape for college admission than they are today, but even so, when you're a first-gen college applicant, there's the family unit is really not as informed about how the process works as a family where mom and dad went to college, or even older siblings went to college. And so when you're first gen, you're figuring it out on your own, hopefully with some resources in school, but not always. And in my case, I had a sort of my origin story as an admission officer was I went to see my guidance counselor in the fall of my senior year, and he pulled out my transcript and he looked at it and he said, "Oh, you're one of the smart ones. I don't have to worry about you. Go back to class. You'll figure it out." And that was it. I mean, that was college counseling for me. And he gave me an app to the state university, and he said, "Good luck." So for me, it was one of those moments as I got older, and I realized this is probably playing out in high schools all around the country, all around the world, where students who don't have a resource to information, don't have access to, how do I prepare my application? What colleges should I even be looking at? How does financial aid work? It became my initial motivation to be a college admission officer because I thought there was some counseling to do and a story to tell, and as my career continued, my own experience as somebody who did figure it out on my own guides the way I think about the work we do. When I'm reading a file and it's from a student from a background like my own, I will be more apt to read between the lines and to understand what isn't being said because there's nobody to say it. And how do you give a student credit for that when they're from a high school where very few people go to college, or their mom and dad didn't go to college, and their file might be a little less complete in a way, which doesn't mean it's not viable. It just doesn't have the same context. And I think on the financial aid side, all colleges and universities struggle to continue to raise the resources we all need to be able to preserve access. And so when that's the background of the Dean of Admission, when I go into meetings, I'm a very strong advocate for why this resource is needed and why we need to continue to both raise more money and preserve the policies we have so that a college like Tufts can be affordable and accessible to the widest pool of people we can find. So that's how it sort of defines my work. It's in my DNA, and it's one of the things I care most about in my work role.
Thank you.
Your coffee's really good, by the way, too.
French press.
Yeah, French press, yeah.
Do we have the can to
mine.
sponsor them? Are there?
Do you want some?
I would like a little
He's going to
bit.
try his first French press coffee.
It's strong.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Very strong.
So now that we spoke a lot about the admissions process and the logistics of it, we'd kind of like to delve more into the thicket of things to more pressing issues. So, speaking of which, in 2009, Tufts suspended its Needblind admissions process. And in your opinion, are there hopes to return to such practices in the future?
That's always the goal. And technically, we didn't suspend Needblind. So the President Backow had been raising resources to make Tufts Needblind. So for 2 cycles in 08 and 09, we were. The policy was never adopted. We just were able to go through the cycle in a Needblind way, and then the recession hit. So that was the, if it's the Roadrunner cartoon, that's where, the Roadrunner comes up to the edge, like, stop. So, the recession paused the implementation of a policy that continues to be a high priority for Tufts. And as the next campaign is developed, it will continue to be the goal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On a different note, last semester, actually, there were protests from the We Are the 3% group on campus, all over racial tensions here at Tufts, and that also spoke to issues that were going around on other campuses in the U.S. Why do you think that such discrepancies exist here at Tufts in terms of a low percentage of African American students, and what do you think admissions will do to address it?
Yeah. So it's a really important conversation that I don't want to say it started last semester because it's ongoing, but it certainly came to a really a higher degree of visibility last fall. And one of the things that we've been talking about intra-admissions is, how do we partner with the Black Student Union in particular in a more direct way? So as we move into April and we release decisions on the class of 2020, we have a plan to do a much more targeted yield outreach, and to see, I think the challenge is always in the month of April, how many people say yes.
Yeah.
So the goal this year will be to convert more of them to a deposit and to do more targeted outreach.
Okay, so on the undergraduate website, it states, and I quote, Tufts welcomes all undergraduate applicants regardless of citizenship status. Undocumented and deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA. Students who apply to Tufts are treated identically to any other U.S. citizen or permanent resident in their high school, end quote. So, if DACA were to be reversed by another president in the future, how would you like admissions to respond?
So that's a big question. Our ability to welcome applicants from all people is in part dependent on President Obama's executive order granting DACA, but we went beyond that to DACA and undocumented. If a new president were to change the law, Tufts is going to have to respond in kind. So, it's one of those hypothetical, like, well, what's the new law look like? But for the moment, there's nothing stopping a private institution like Tufts from admitting students from whatever background we would like. And I think that, to me, is consistent with our values of active citizenship and egalitarianism. So being able to include students regardless of citizenship status was a really important policy shift that my hope is Tufts will be able to preserve as we go forward. But it's going to be dependent on, this is where elections matter, who wins and what are the consequences of that new president and her or his agenda.
Also, looking forward a little bit with the admissions process, the SMFA was just recently acquired, as you mentioned earlier. Do you see any change in the admission structure to kind of like outreach towards art students?
Yeah. So, the arts have always been part of liberal arts, but now we have a much more overt curriculum that's being developed. The BFA program will be something that's now a part of the undergraduate curriculum. We've always had the dual degree with the SMFA. So we're beginning to lay the groundwork for, how do you just, first of all, what is the curriculum? That hasn't been completely defined yet. But once the faculty says, here are the degrees, potential new major in studio art, we'll start talking about it and put spotlights on faculty and students and majors to build the pool just like we would any other new part of Tufts. The parallel would be a couple years ago when film studies was introduced, and we started to highlight it as part of what we do at Tufts, and we already see a really dynamic pool growing of students who've said, yes, I absolutely want to study film, and Tufts curriculum is really exciting. So we'll visit some different schools, particularly arts magnet schools, as we start to travel around the world, and it'll broaden the conversation about the curriculum at Tufts.
Broaden the strokes.
Yeah.
To use an art metaphor. So looking forward again, still a little bit, and taking into account your role in your future, you've recently gone through an admissions process yourself in a way.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Dartmouth, and why did Dartmouth choose you, do you think?
So I hope we chose each other for the same reason. I was just like in 03, I got recruited, and as the conversation began, I thought, it's time for me to try something new after 13 years. And I think that's a healthy professional instinct. I think my role personally and for the institution, I think the turnover when it comes kind of restarts the juices a little bit on both sides. So for Dartmouth, I was inspired by a new leadership team that had recently come together there, and some of the appetite they have for reimagining the admission process and their outreach. It felt like time to do again what I did here, which is kind of come in and put together a strategy and lead it. So felt like a good next step after my jumbo years. Yeah.
Are you going to be utilizing the skills you learned here? Is it going to be a similar kind of brand that you create there, do you think?
That any effective admission process has to be framed around a really clear conversation about who are we. So that will be part of it, to figure out what's the authentic story there and how do we communicate it. Yeah.
Well, you've clearly left your mark here.
Thank you.
And so what would you say you're most proud of? What's your legacy that you want us to know?
The thing that struck me the most when the announcement was made that I was leaving was how many faculty members reached out and said that during my tenure, the quality of their classroom experience has gone up. That they can see a richer dynamic with all of you in their classrooms, and that's for me the most meaningful thing, because I often say I work for the faculty of the institution. My job is to bring to their classrooms the best students we could find, and so to have them say back, "You made the difference," is for me a really important legacy. And I, as here you all are, I've enjoyed my interactions with Tufts undergrads over the years, and knowing that I had a part in bringing you all together and creating this community it's a meaningful
family, like you say.
Yeah, no, it's you build a community and you have these experiences with each other, and if you go to matriculation every year when I do the welcome, what I'm doing in that speech is giving you some clues about who your peers are. Who did we see through the admission process that we want you to be able to poke and peel back and really understand that, people are multifaceted, and there's a reason why each one of you is sitting on that quad, and to start to imagine, what conversations or what partnerships might I have with people who are very similar to me, very different from me, who grew up in really different places, whose ideas I've never been exposed to. That's why you come to a place like this. So
So good changes overall the past 10 years.
Yeah.
What about the next 10 years?
For Tufts?
Yeah, what do you think? What do you see happening?
I think Tufts is in a really great spot, and the admissions landscape moves really quickly, and the big unknown in the last couple of years and in the next few is the number of 18-year-olds is not growing nationally. So, continuing to find creative ways to tap into parts of the world and parts of the U.S. that aren't organically wired to send students to northeastern independent colleges and universities. So you think about the Southwest and California, there aren't many private colleges and universities in those states, and those are the fastest growing states in the country. So the opportunity and the challenge is to continue to go west, to go abroad, to go to the South, and to tell the story. We're a D3 place, so our basketball teams are doing really well, but they're not playing on CBS in March Madness, and so D3 doesn't have the same spotlight that D1 creates, and so that is what it is. But it's how do you move into parts of the country where there's not awareness of smaller liberal arts and engineering schools that aren't kind of big state universities or names that people know because they hear it on TV.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with that because I'm from the Midwest myself, and the only people who knew what Tufts was actually my parents, because they're both physicians and they know about Tufts Med when they first came here in the 80s. But besides that, like when I told my teachers, they were like, "Is that in New York?"
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's just the dynamic that the way many people understand higher ed. The places that are smaller are often a bit more off the spotlight. Doesn't mean that we're not all high quality, but it's just in the public imagination we're not there quite as organically, and so we have to introduce it and to be.
It almost gives you an advantage.
Yeah.
The opportunity to present it.
Yeah. But what's definitely happening is you see a shift from the New England Mid-Atlantic area, which has historically been the main place for northeastern colleges and universities, and as that population starts to shift, admissions has to shift with it.
Is it California this past year was the second largest state?
California's number 2 most of the recent years, neck and neck with New York for second place, and it's going to continue. I mean, it's just a matter of time for California kind of catches Massachusetts.
Yeah. Wow.
Just where the demographics are going.
I'm coming here for the water.
Yeah.
That's
UC Medford.
Yeah. Nice. Well, do you have any advice for anyone, like whoever will come to fill your shoes in the fall?
My successor.
What would you say to them?
This is a really wonderful deanship with a faculty that has been great partners for my team as we tell the story, and I've been really struck over the years by how many professors readily join us for different events that we do, whether it's Jumbo Day or the engineering programs in the fall or just a guidance counselor visit. A wide number of faculty have been part of what we do, and that's not true everywhere. And it gives us a really organic way of talking about the classroom experience and the value of teaching in a research university, and I hope the next dean will continue that, and to whoever it is will bring their own flavor to the position, and that'll be fun to see too, and the way it's similar and the way it changes after I leave.
Nice.
Yeah.
What will you miss most about Tufts?
Tufts, I have lived here, worked here, been part of Tufts longer than anywhere I've ever worked. I've been in my room in Benditson 201 longer than I lived in my room at my parents' house at this point. So, as I catch myself thinking about, it's wrapping up, That it's going to be very poignant when I get to May and say goodbye. So I'm not looking forward to that. Honestly, I'm not looking forward to it. I know that I joked, and I think the Daily used this line, that I'm the John Boehner of college admissions, where I tear up pretty quickly. So I expect the end to be teary. But I also, over my years, have learned that when I do well up, it's because something or someone has been important to me. So, and that's definitely true for Tufts. So, yeah.
Well, we'll certainly miss you
Thank
at
you.
Tufts, and we wish you the very best. So
Thank you,
very
Shane.
much. Appreciate it.
Good luck at Dartmouth.
Thank you.